Hello, everyone. This is Emily Burley, President of ELS. Welcome to today's ELS X webinar, and thank you for joining us. ELS is a community that brings together ambitious executive assistants just like you. We are the creator of ELS Forum, a unique event experience for EAs to learn, connect, and contribute solutions to their greatest challenges. At the forum, assistants gain support, training, and inspiration from expert instructors and powerful peers. Plus, discover a renewed sense of passion and purpose in your career as an assistant. The ELS Forum is coming to over 20 cities across North America, and we're currently running our absolute best discount of the year. It's 20% off of all of our events, and that's over $400 off registration, you guys. So be sure to take advantage of this amazing deal and get registered before December 20th. To see if your city is on the list and reserve your seat at this amazing discount, visit elsforum.com and use the promo code 2020ELS. Today, I am thrilled to partner with Jillian Huffnagel. Jillian has been supporting executives for over 17 years across a myriad of industries, which has given her a unique vantage point as a coach. Having observed the dynamics of stellar teams and learning firsthand from teams that have effectiveness gaps, she can quickly assess where teams struggle and lean in to provide guidance, coaching, and strategic support. Her approach starts with accountability first, team effectiveness second, and a broader organizational influence last. Hello and welcome, Jillian.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Emily.
Jillian, you know what? I just heard that I'm getting some feedback. So
Sure.
while I do the rest of the intro, make sure that your computer volume or your computer sound is muted.
It sure is.
Okay.
Today, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to switch back to the computer and drop the call on the phone.
Sounds great. Thanks, Jillian. So today, Jillian's going to be discussing owning your annual review and how to articulate accomplishments to drive career development. And it's such an important topic that we talk about at the forums, that we're going to be talking about soon on our podcast. And I'm so excited to have Jillian here today to really dive in on the how. How can you really articulate your accomplishments? Because you know, as assistants, you do so much more than what's on your job description, and you deserve to be compensated for it. So Jillian's going to do a deep dive for us today on how we actually do that. There will be an opportunity to get your questions answered. So go ahead and submit your questions at any time via the questions tab. Right on your webinar toolbar, you'll see the questions tab. Go ahead and shoot me over a question at any time. And we will be recording this webinar, which you'll receive tomorrow, and you'll also get a certificate of attendance emailed to you tomorrow, and you can download a copy of today's slides via the handout tab right on your toolbar. So Jillian, if you are ready, it is now my pleasure to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. How does the sound come
It sounds beautiful. Thanks, Jillian.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me again. I'm ecstatic to be here. One of the things that I've learned in my career is that reviews are not as easy as we think that they are. And so today we're going to cover a lot. The thing that I want to ask you to do before we get started is to dedicate this time to yourself. Your leaders and your teams are going to be interrupting you. They're going to be asking you for things. And today should be a commitment for the next hour to advocate for yourself by being fully present in this webinar and getting as much out of it as you possibly can. So we're going to talk about the review cycle at its best. We're going to talk about why reviews are so hard, what makes them so hard. We're going to do a little bit of work to change your mindset and your approach on how you tackle your annual reviews and learn some new tools on how you advocate for yourself and set yourself up for your future success. And then, of course, at the end, we're going to have some dialogue. So we're going to dive right in. So the review cycle at its best, this is the idyllic picture of what the review cycle should look like. Some of you already have reviews in your organizations, some of you don't. And so this is a watermark for you. This is what, when we look at a review cycle with a lens, it should look like it when it is exceptional and when it has operational hygiene. So during the annual review cycle, when it's working incredibly well, you should be, I apologize. You should be sitting with your leader to review and agree upon your goals each year. Throughout the course of the year, you should be tracking and discussing your goals regularly. You should be editing or tweaking your goals or even deferring them as needed. You should be having a dialogue, a postmortem around how you did, and you should be scoring your goals. Some organizations score their goals using objectives and key results. Some use management by objectives. Some use percentages. Other organizations use quantitative versus qualitative. So qualitative could be, my goal was fair, it was okay, it was good, it was exceptional. Again, how your organization scores your goals may vary, but you should have some type of scoring in place. And then there should be some level of bonus or promotion or raise associated with it as appropriate. It's important to understand that philosophically, some organizations choose to divorce the annual review cycle with any type of compensation cycle. So what I've done for you at the bottom of this slide is I've given you my first present. Most of us are in Q4 fiscal 19 right now. So we're closing out our fiscal year and we start our new fiscal year in January of 20. What I've done is I've created this timeline for you on how the review should operate throughout the course of the year if you are in a fiscal year that's ending in December and starting in January. What's also great about this little tool for you is if your, for example, annual cycle begins in August, you can just move these tiles around at the bottom and then you'll still be able to address your fiscal year cycle. So this is for you if you either don't have a review cycle in place, or perhaps you do and it doesn't have a lot of hygiene around it. This is a great slide to have a dialogue with your leader and your HR partners about best practices for our annual review cycle within your organization. Now let's look at it a little bit differently. Let's look at the annual review from the perspective of you, the outstanding executive assistant, or the assistant who is striving to be outstanding. And even those of us who consider ourselves outstanding or who are consistently told we're outstanding, we have gotten to that point because we continue to do the work to grow and develop. There's always more work to be done. And especially in how our society is evolving and how technology is evolving, in order to continue to be an outstanding executive assistant, we have to be able to talk about the impact that we're making on the business in our annual reviews. In order for us to really have a healthy dialogue in that annual review, again, we need to be discussing our work with our leaders in a regular format. So this slide is another present for you. If you don't have a regular one-on-one with your leader, you can say, oh, I attended this webinar with ELSX and I learned that best practices for assistants are to minimally meet with their leaders once a quarter to discuss the status of their goals. That's really not a huge ask. It's only 4 times a year. I work for you nights and weekends. I think I could get 4 one-on-ones out of you a year. Can you sign up for that? So friends, this is our ideal scenario, right? We're discussing our work regularly with our leaders. At our annual review, because we've already talked about all those projects and initiatives and programs, we're not scrambling at the last minute to figure out what the heck we did this year. And we're focused on our growth to become that outstanding executive assistant. This is our perfect picture. Now we have to talk about what gets in the way of that perfect picture. Why are reviews so hard? What are the things that trip us up? What are the things that confuse us? What are the things that concern us? And I think it's important to think about all of those things as excuses. I've heard from numerous EAs, I don't even know if I want to be an EA long term. I've heard many times that everyone in my organization just gets a cost of living adjustment, so why should I even bother writing down and tracking my goals? I've also heard a lot, we don't have reviews in our company. How do I even get started? And sadly, I've heard a number of times that EAs are the only function that don't get a review in our company. So let's address each one of those. In today's webinar, whether you would like to be an EA long-term or not, what you're going to learn about a good review cycle and advocating for yourself and articulating your value to the business is a transposable skill. Whether you are an EA for 2 more years or 5 more years or 10 more years, whatever you do in your future, you're going to have the skills to have a successful annual review coming out of this. The next one, the COLA adjustment, that cost of living adjustment. What do you have to lose? If you say, I want to be able to actually sit down and talk about the value that I bring to the business, you have nothing to lose. If you know you're getting a COLA adjustment anyways, and now you give the opportunity to your leader to really look at what you're doing and consider benefiting yourself more, whether it's through finances or benefits, you got to give it a try. The next one is we don't have reviews in our company, and today you're going to get tons of tools on how to do it. We already talked about the review cycle in best practice. We're going to also double and triple down on how you track and articulate your work. And then the last one, the EAs are the only function that don't get a review. This is not going to be a popular word, but that's discrimination. Pure and simple, it's discrimination. And so how you choose to approach your leader and your HR partners with this, feel free to use that because it is discrimination. And moving forward, you shouldn't stand for it. You should have all of the same benefits and opportunities as everyone else in your organization, and you should take control of the process. I'm sure many of you are rolling excuses in your heads right now. I want you to put them all aside because you're going to walk away today feeling incredibly ready to move forward with that annual review. It's your career development. HR is not going to hand it to you. Your leader is not going to hand it to you. Your best friend is not going to hand it to you. I guarantee you there is no one in your company right now thinking to themselves, I don't think we gave Jillian a review last year and we feel really bad about that. So we're going to take up the initiative to define a review process for her so she feels like she has a good career path here. That's your responsibility. So let's go ahead and do that today. We're going to change your mindset. I want you to think about everything that you know to be true about an annual review from your personal experience, and I want you to pull all of that out of your brain and all of that out of your heart, and I want you to set it on a shelf. Pick a shelf right now. Maybe you're working from home and it's on your home desk. Maybe you are at your office. Maybe you're in a conference room. Take what you think you know about annual reviews and set them aside, because I'm going to give you some new tools. I want you to think about how your brain responds to an annual review, how your body and your mind put you in a situation where it's incredibly challenging to be successful. I'm sure some of you have seen this content before, how your brain responds to stress, fight or flight or freeze versus face. I've heard from countless executive assistants that they are stressed out about their annual review. They are so worried about what their leader is going to say. They're going to clam up, or they're just going to skip the review altogether. We don't have to operate that way. I'm going to teach you how. So if you know that when your body is responding to stress, you'll start to see things like your heart will race, your breath will become uneven. Those of us who hide it really well, our faces will become beet red because we're so angry or we're so frustrated or we're so scared, but we don't want to talk about it. So then our body starts to turn bright red. That's cortisol. That is your brain going into its primordial state of fear and pushing a chemical into your body called cortisol. Well, if we know that cortisol is getting pushed when we're stressed, we can actually get ahead of it by changing the way we are physically responding and pushing oxytocin instead. When we're in cortisol, we cannot collaborate. When we are in cortisol, we are focused on protecting ourselves and not open to feedback. When we are in cortisol, we are unable to objectively look at things as data instead of ego offenses. So let's step forward, and I'm going to teach you how to be a little bit more Zen in your meetings. In order to be a Zen master in your meetings, here are a few tips, and we're all going to do it right now. Every single one of you, all of my friends on this call, I want you to sit tall. I want you to pull your shoulders back, and I want your arms to be open. And you don't have to hold them open like someone's running and jumping into your arms for a hug. Hold your arms open in a way where either your hands are on the table in front of you or they are rested on your lap. When you are in a meeting showing this physical body language, you're showing that you are open to collaboration. You are showing that you are confident. You are showing that you are in charge. Your ability to control your emotions and your body language are going to be significantly higher if you choose the way you sit tall and you focus on staying seated tall during the course of that meeting. The other thing that you're going to want to do both in your annual review or any one-on-one with your leader is practice what you want to say. Your tone, your pace, the actual words that you're going to use. When you start to talk about high stakes things like salary or bonus or maybe not being respected, that's when that cortisol is going to start coming back in, right? You got to push it, right? You've got to be able to switch your brain from fight, flight, or freeze into talking, into dialoguing. So practice that. Maybe you do it in the mirror, maybe you do it with a mentor or a friend. My poor sister is also an EA, so she gets most of mine, and I get most of hers. I think it's also important to think about the environment that you're in, because the environment that you're in is the container for the energy. If you choose a room and a seating arrangement that promotes the face-to-face dialogue, you're going to get a better reaction from your leader. You're going to get better attention from your leader. You also want to be thoughtful about the tools. You don't want to be running out of the room because your whiteboard markers don't work. You don't want to be scrambling for a pen and paper. Have what you need going in to limit the interruptions. And then when you're ready to start, ask your leader. Say, this is really important to me. I really appreciate you being here to support me. Do I have your full attention? And your leader's going to look at you maybe with some wide eyes and be like, oh, yes, oh, okay, yep, I'm ready, let's go. You have my full attention. They may even set their phone on vibrate or off. Ideally, you can say, hey, can we turn that phone off? And then you need to be open to the feedback and the questions. This is where your nasty little ego comes into play. And your ego says, me, I'm right, he's wrong. I'm right, she's wrong. When that ego is at play, you're not open to feedback and you're not open to questions, and you go back into fight, flight, or freeze. So put that ego in the closet during this meeting. That is one way to approach being Zen in your meetings. Now, that's physically the time in the meeting. I want to talk about the time before the meeting. Something that's really hot and sexy in the workplace right now is this concept of being mindful. It's actually rooted in psychology, and it really works. When your brain is full of garbage and distractions, you cannot possibly be focused on your career development. You cannot possibly be focused on having a stellar annual review. So I'm going to give you an example of a mindfulness exercise that you can use when you're preparing for your next one-on-one or your next annual review with your leader. We're not going to do it today, but it's on the slide here for you so that you can go back to this and use it as a tool. I'm sure I'm getting some eye rolls right now. I'm sure I'm getting some excuses right now. I don't have time for that. What I can tell you with absolute certainty is that the people who make time for themselves and focus on themselves, they are far more successful in their lives and their careers than anyone else. They have far more life balance. They show up the better version of themselves more than anybody else. So I want you to think about someone, whether it's in your home life or your work life, think about someone who is always poised, always calm, always professional. think of that person. Now imagine yourself being that person in your annual review. This is one exercise that you can use 5 to 10 minutes before your review. And guess what, friends? You own the calendar. You are responsible for orchestrating the operational hygiene of yourself and your leader. So you can make sure you have this time set aside. You can make sure that you have a quiet nook to go sit in and do this. You can make sure that you're not responding to your text messages during that 5 to 10 minutes. And then you're going to go into that meeting being a total Zen master, and you're going to crush your annual review. So this is the energy and the motion around the review and how your body and your mind respond to it. Now let's talk about tactical approaches. Changing how you approach the annual review itself. We cannot have any more last-minute rushing. You want to continue to be or strive to be an outstanding executive assistant? Yes, absolutely. Say that. Yes, I want to be outstanding. Also, you need to say yes to the next two things. Yes, I plan to change the way I talk about the value and the impact I bring to the business. Yes, I know this starts with regularly discussing my work with my leader. You want all these things, friends? It's time to do the work. So what now? What do we do? I have a present for you. So I have a goal tracking template built for you that you can use. You can download it right after this meeting. You can go immediately start to write down all of the things that you've accomplished. You can write down how they connect to all of the values of your business, how they connect to the initiatives of your business, and you can start to talk about your feedback on how you think that you're doing. So that when you go sit down with your leader next, you can be like, oh, I got this great template and we're going to use it. So you're welcome, my little present to you. It looks like this. This is an example of how you can fill it out. There's also a blank template for you. So if you go to the bottom of the handout from today's slides, there's a link where you can go and you can take this document and you can make it your own. For those of you that have a bonus component to it, you can also build that in. Your work needs to be articulated in a way where it ties back to the business and it ties back to your professional development goals and your personal goals. So this is a present for you that you can take and you can use right after this meeting. We are not going to stay on this slide because it is an eyesore. Now we're going to talk about the fact that we know we need to make the commitment to have those one-on-ones in order to have a successful annual review. If we want to be proactive instead of reactive, we've got to meet regularly. At least once a quarter, friends. That's only 4 times a year. Any executive that tells you, no, I won't meet with you 4 times a year, you should be looking for a new leader to support. When you go into your one-on-one, you own the agenda and the topics. You set that in the calendar invite. You have a link to your goal document, which I just provided you. And at any time that you meet with your leader, you just go into that one-on-one calendar invite, you click on that goal document, and you bring that baby up, and you start talking about what you're doing. You have live dialogue around whether or not you need additional buy-in and support on your work as you're executing. You're absolutely open to feedback. And think about changing up the environment. This was one that came from another webinar that I had given a while back, where someone was saying, God, my one-on-ones are so stale. We always sit in the same room and we do the same thing and we talk about the same top 5 initiatives. So think about changing up the environment. Think about once a quarter going out for a lunch. Think about booking an offsite venue for you and your leader to really dig in on how you two can be a better strategic partnership. Those are best practices for your one-on-one. That happens regularly. This is your commitment to yourself, and you need to make sure you get your leader's commitment to support you. Now let's talk about your annual review best practices. Of course, we need to be Zen. We need to be in control of our body and our mind. We need to be prepared and specific. We need to drive the conversation. We need to be able to avoid sugarcoating or hiding things that are off track, things that did not get delivered. We need to have open dialogue around why those things didn't get delivered. What is true in our environment? What has changed in our environment? What have we learned? Have the company-wide initiatives changed? And then, therefore, my individual goals should change. During the course of your review, you should be showcasing your return on investment, the impact, and the value that you bring to the business. And we're going to talk more about those next. And again, kick that ego to the side, lock it in a closet, flush it down the toilet. You need to be open to feedback, because when you're open to feedback, your leader will be open to your feedback as well. And you're a strategic business partner. You need to also coach and drive your leaders. Do any of us feel like this when we're sitting in a room with our leader or our team? Are you even listening to me? We're going to talk about how to use language that ensures our leaders and or our peers and direct reports are listening to us, because sometimes annual review cycles also include feedback and dialogue with others beyond our leader. Before we can do that, we need to understand what is the minimum bar of delivery that we need to make as an executive assistant. Friends, this is the watermark. This is the minimum bar of service you have to provide to your leaders before you get stretch assignments, before you get additional responsibilities, before you take on any more. If the things listed here are not stellar, you are going to have specific work to do as an EA. If you are not calendaring in a proactive way, that should be your goal for moving forward. How do you understand that better? And so what I've done is, in the addendum of the slides, you have a list of questions that you can ask your leader. And I'm going to move to an example on the next slide. Question 1, for your leader, proactive calendaring. Your schedule is smooth. Double bookings are rare, if at all. You always have the correct dial-ins, attachments, the right attendees, conference rooms, and buffers between meetings. And your leader's going to have these response options. It's important to use this language because it opens up the dialogue. So I recommend that you survey your leader before you go into your annual review, and then you use the responses here to have a discussion around, gosh, I had no idea that you felt I had so much room for improvement with proactive calendaring. What does that look like for you? Or maybe your leader is going to say, number 6, NA, does not apply, and I do not need help in this area. Ladies and gentlemen, if you support a leader that says NA, does not apply, and I do not need help in this area, the minimum bar for being able to properly support a leader is calendar ownership. So you either have a frank conversation with that leader that moving forward, you're going to own his or her calendar, or you start looking for another leader to support. Minimum bar, we own the calendar. So this is also available for you to create your own survey, to have a dialogue with your leaders before you go into your annual review, or even before you go into your next one-on-one, and then you jumpstart that dialogue. Another way to drive the conversation is to tackle some of the common concerns that you have. So I hear a lot, my leader talks all the time. I can tell you, I had a CEO that I supported who, if we had a 60-minute scheduled, that man would talk for 47 minutes straight, unless I interrupted. And so what I learned with him was this cool trick. If I get in the meeting and before he starts, I say, gosh, hey, can I go first? I really have these 3 things that are critically important I get your feedback on, and I'm sure you have at least 5 more things for me. Can I go first? He never said no. He never said, no, I have to go first. So ask to go first and see what happens. The other one that happens really frequently is my leader's super nice and we only chat about personal stuff. And so by the time we get through our 30-minute one-on-one, we're laughing, we had coffee, we're joking, but we actually didn't talk about anything tactical. And so I don't know. Am I on the right track? Am I focusing on the right things? You can time box the opening of the agenda. When you start that meeting, you say, hey, let's spend 5 minutes on a quick catch up because I want to hear about your weekend and I know you want to hear about mine. And not but, and I have these other things I want to make sure we cover. And I need context from you. Then you time box it and you stick to it. Now, this next one is me totally the pot calling the kettle black. I don't protect my one-on-one time. I always move our one-on-ones so my leader can focus on more important things. I have done this so many times in my career. What I learned was that you have to be able to work with your leader at the time that your leader is going to give you their attention. At one point in my career, I supported a CEO where I called him every single morning at 7:30 to wake him up. I was already up. I had a small child at the time who didn't sleep much. So 7:30 in the morning, calling and waking him up, that's when I got my time to talk to him. And I ran through my list of things, not just the tactical, but the growth. And then there's another leader that I supported where it was really challenging to meet once a week. So I had an email meeting every other week. And I would send a status update to say, these are the things I've worked on. These are the challenges that I've experienced. I don't need any help from you. So unless you have questions, I'll see you next week. That status report provided so much visibility to him that he could then email me back when he had questions or concerns. And it also jump-started the dialogue for when we did sit down one-on-one every other week. The last one, my leader always cancels our one-on-one last minute. This is where I need to challenge you to be brave. You need to have the dialogue with your leader. You need to tell your leader what you need to be successful. You need to set the boundary and say, it's not acceptable. When you cancel our one-on-one last minute, I feel disrespected and I'm concerned that's going to affect our relationship moving forward. When you use I statements and you focus on what the outcome is, your leader is going to hear you and start to change their behavior. It might take multiple asks and multiple reminders, but you have to step forward in bravery and have that conversation. So now we know about best practices for our one-on-ones and our annual reviews. Now let's talk about how we change the language that we use to talk about the value that we bring. I am sure at one point in our careers, every single one of us have organized a supply closet, and if we haven't yet, we're going to. We can't talk about our work based on the tasks. When we do, it diminishes people's respect of us. It diminishes their understanding of the value that we bring to the business. Never say, oh, I just organized the supply closet in my spare time. Oh, I just found us a vendor that is cheaper. You need to talk in value-based language. I increased the efficiency of our organization. I saved the department money by organizing that supply closet and securing a new vendor for the break room services. I did that. I brought that value. And then you should be tracking how much money you've saved. That's your ROI. That's your return on investment. This type of task language versus value language is what gets you respect. It's what pushes you from being a standard assistant into an exceptional one. You need to speak in language that talks about the output and the value that you bring to the business. Another thing that we need to do is we need to stop asking, how am I doing? How am I doing? That is not helpful. You're either going to get a great or a not great or like no sort of answer at all. It is not tactical. There is nothing we can do with the data when we say, how am I doing? And our leader says, great. I struggled with it most of my career. I've always been very driven, very passionate. I've always been a problem solver. And so what was happening in my career is I was turning into a bulldozer. I was turning into the get shit done girl. I wasn't getting the in-between feedback on How do I change some of my behaviors and tactics to move the needle? So when you say something like, when I organized the supply closet and I partnered with Kim, I felt it was very successful for the most part. We were unable to get the buy-in on the restocking request form. What specific feedback do you have for me on getting buy-in so that I can apply that to my next efficiency project? This is talking about the task that you did, talking about what you observed about the success of it, and asking specifically, what can you do to help me understand how I can improve? You need to be able to focus on the feedback that you want from the dialogue. Otherwise, it's another meeting that didn't need to happen. And we all have too many of those. You need to include your brag sheet in your review. Every single one of us should have one. If you don't, make it now. Set aside a folder, take every single one of those emails where someone emailed you something about how awesome or amazing or fantastic or just rock starish that you are, and you tuck those into a folder, right? You keep that brag sheet and you pull that out at your review. This office would not function without you. We're always prepared. You're always kind and caring. I felt so welcome and prepared for my first day as a new employee. Sarah did that for me, right? How many times have we saved the day? How many times? I had a leader a number of years ago who was going on a trip with his wife, a much deserved vacation. And he calls me from the airport and he says, Jillian, I forgot my laptop. What did I do? I jumped up, I ran to his house, I got his laptop, I brought it to the airport, and I was like, hey, where are you? And he's like, yeah, I'm in Delta. I'm like, no, you're not. He's like, yeah, we're standing outside. And I said, are you in the domestic terminal? And he said, yeah. I said, but you're flying international. Have you checked your bag yet? And he says, oh, crap. And meanwhile, his wife's yelling at him. I told you Jillian should have coordinated all this, but you didn't listen. Those are your brag sheet moments. You take those into your brag sheet, you take those into your review, and you show how awesome you are. You're always going above and beyond. You are simply the best. Make sure you track it. And don't keep it just in your work folder. Make sure you have a copy for yourself. I recently looked back on a brag sheet item that I had from when I was really young in my career, and I felt like I was constantly falling on my face and making mistakes. And I was blown away at how people appreciated what I did, even though I was so rough around the edges. So hold on to that brag sheet and use it as part of your career development. Next, you need to showcase your work towards the company goals and initiatives. There's a lot on here, but we're not going to review it all. Let's just say, for the sake of now, that you're helping plan the annual company kickoff. The whole company's participating, and there are tons of things that need to be done. But the first step to planning is you need to lock in the venue and the content and the team building. And so all of this work that you're doing, you're tracking. The budgets, the venues, the stakeholders, the vendors, the speakers, the facilitators, the activities. You're going to partner with a lot of people to get that done. Department heads, HR, IT, creative. You're going to ensure that planning goes smoothly. These are the things that you just do because you're good at them. Now you need to talk about the value that they bring to the business. The goal for the kickoff is to align the entire company on our 2020 goals, to get closer as a team and have fun. So now talk about the tasks that you did based on the value it brought to the business. This quarter, I worked with all the stakeholders to secure the venue, define a content strategy, and lock in activities that will support the success of our annual kickoff. But I'm not done. Next quarter, we're going to execute that kickoff, and we're going to achieve alignment for our top goals. We're going to definitely become closer as a team, and we're going to have so much fun. I cannot wait to show you guys the team building that we have lined up. It's stellar. And you know what? Even then, I'm not done. After that, I'm going to close the loop. We're going to survey the team to ensure that we've achieved our goals and we understand what are our areas for improvement next year. Because as an exceptional executive assistant, I'm never done growing. I always want to know how I'm going to move the needle next year. That's how you talk about your work. So now we've got a lot of tools that we're going to use in our annual review discussion. Before we walk away today, though, and start doing our Q&A, we're going to talk about how you're going to own your 2020 targets. And it's really important when you think about owning your 2020 targets that you understand this model. Your career growth sits atop all of the other things that are important to you. Your values, your family and friends. Some of us have fur babies, right? Your health, your hobbies, your fun, your financial needs. On top of that, your career growth cannot exist if you don't protect your foundations, if you don't have balance, and if you don't look at your growth and development with intent. So think about that concept of mindfulness. Think about that concept of being able to track your output throughout the course of the year so that you're not stressed out, so you have more time for hobbies, so you have more time for health, and you're not constantly chasing your tail because you always put yourself last. I had a friend of mine tell me when I was 17, and man, was he right. He said, Jillian, you have to feed yourself before you feed everyone else, or you are gonna starve. That has stuck with me to my bones for so long. And it's only been probably in the past 5 to 10 years that I've started to live it. So make that investment in yourself. Focus on your growth while you honor your foundations. So that's me talking for probably too long. I also have another present for you. Your boss is going to want to know what you learned today on this webinar. So think about how you're going to respond. Gosh, annual reviews are no longer fearful. I no longer have frustration. I'm not going to scramble last minute. I'm going to be proactive. I have new tactics for self-regulation. I am going to avoid the common stress factors associated with fear, and I'm going to get out of fear, fight, flight, and freeze. And I'm going to get into collaboration. I'm going to track those accomplishments. I'm going to show you the value that I bring to the business. And you know what? I got this. I'm ready to better advocate for my future growth as an administrative professional by step 1, owning my annual review. That's it, friends.
Jillian, awesome. Thank you so much. I want to go back real quick to the link to the goal sheet that you have so generously shared with everybody. I've gotten lots of questions from people on how they can access that. So I just tested it 3 times, guys, and it works for me. And I had my colleague here test it, and it works for them. If it's not working for you and you're not able to download it, it's probably an internal firewall. So please reach out to your IT teams or make sure that you just forward the PDF maybe to your personal computer and try to access it at home. We have thousands of people that subscribe to and participate in our webinars, and unfortunately we cannot send emails one-on-one to people. If I could support you all, I would. So please go ahead and make sure to download the slides. If you can't download that link to Jillian's resource, to the goal setting spreadsheet, go ahead and forward it to your home email, and then hopefully you can access it that way, or reach out to your IT team and they'll be able to hook you up.
Yep. And it is a Google template. So if you are accessing it from your personal email, it's a link that anyone can access from a personal account. And it is available for you to make a copy of it and define as your own.
Awesome. Okay, and then I'm going to say it one more time since we're getting so many questions about it. Guys, go ahead and download the handout on the toolbar. And then you'll see on, I think it's like maybe the 3rd to last slide, Jillian.
Yes.
Yeah, you have the link to the goal setting template for assistance, and you can go ahead and access your copy.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, Jillian, let's dive into the questions. We have a lot of amazing questions, so I want to try to get to as many as we can in the next 15 minutes. So the first one is, and I thought this was a wonderful question to kind of kick it off. So what happens if, like, you're one-on-one, like constantly, your one-on-one or your review is just like constantly being moved.
Mhm.
And like you try to set the time. I personally love your example of like, I had to call my executive at 7 a.m., but that's when I got their undivided attention. You problem solved that. You found a solution. That doesn't work for everybody, but it worked for the two of you, which is great. What do you do? How do you tackle that? And like, how do you really communicate to your exec that like, listen, this time is valuable and and we need it.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple things you can try. You can try to like reverse engineer it. So if you build your goal sheet and you put your feedback on it, you can send that to your leader in advance and you can say, listen, I know you're busy. I'm not going to ask for an hour of your time. I'm going to ask for 20 minutes of your time to sit with me one on one. In advance of that, I've booked time for you to review my goal sheet and I've booked time for you to look at my feedback on how I'm doing. So you can think about it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. You can get a little bit creative with how you break it up. So part of it might be a live collaboration in a document, and part of it might be that live one-on-one conversation. The other one that I would say is this concept of demanding time. So I've had leaders before who I really couldn't get their attention, and the only way I could get anything done with them is I would walk with them from one meeting to the next. But what I would do is I would make sure that they had a 15-minute buffer. So strategically, I was planning on taking that time from them. This is not ideal, and I'm not advocating for it. I'm just giving a couple of examples of where you can get a little bit more creative. And guess what? If you constantly walk with your leader from one meeting to the next, they're going to get sick of you. And you're going to say, hey, next time, let's not do this while we're walking. Next time, I'd like for you to commit to the time that I'm booking on your calendar for us to sit down and discuss this.
Jillian, what about what if you're supporting someone that works remote or you work remote? You're not in the same location. So like, obviously you wouldn't have that option of being able to kind of walk with them from meeting to meeting, or you wouldn't be able to pop into their office. So there's that. And kind of step two to that question is how do you, if you are having a review, how do you leverage that? What is the best way to set up your review when you are not in the same place with your exec?
That's a great question. So in my last role, I was completely remote. I was the chief of staff at Duo Security, and my CEO was in Michigan, and I was here in Massachusetts. And I supported him for 2 years. And I also ran the administrative team for the organization globally. And what I learned about being a fully remote employee was that um, I had to really come prepared to meetings. I had to be very concise and very clear because we didn't have a lot of that one-on-one physical connection where we could kind of really lean in and understand each other's body language. You only get so much when you're on WebEx or you're on Zoom or you're on webinar, whatever it is. You can only see and feel so much of the energy in the room. So a couple things I would do is I had a I had a partner. I had a senior EA in the office who was also helping me support the CEO. She would be my partner to make sure that he was getting into that meeting. She would be my partner to make sure that he was going to the right room. She would be my partner to give me a heads up on what was his mindset going into that day because she typically saw him physically before I did. So leverage your on-site resources, I would say, is one tactic when you're remote. I would say the other thing about being remote is most of your organizations have some type of budget for travel. And so for you as an administrative professional, if your leader's constantly traveling, maybe you can travel with your leader so that you get a little bit more visibility into what it's like when your leader's out on the road, but that also gets you some one-on-one time that maybe you didn't have in the past. So travel could be a tactic. And then the last tactic that I would say is having that dialogue with your leader again about how important this is for you. If you ask and you say, I need this, we are typically the last people in the organization to raise our hand and say, I need help. And so change the way you approach it. Don't say, I'm mad at you. Don't say, I'm disappointed in you. Say, I need your help. I need you to show up for this, and see what happens.
Jillian, how would you suggest going about having a conversation around a title change? And I love this question because, as you and I have talked about at great lengths, this is very timely. Because I think that there is a major shift happening in the titles for executive assistants, depending on the industry and the companies that you support.
Mhm.
But what if your responsibilities are far beyond what is actually in your job description, or your responsibilities are, you feel, beyond an executive assistant or an administrative assistant? What does that conversation look like? And how do you go about approaching maybe your organization, your company, or your boss?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, but in January, are you going to have the title and leveling conversation with Lynn?
We absolutely are. Yeah, so we'll dive deeper into this in January.
Okay.
But I'd love your opinions on it, especially as it applies to if you're having a review conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you need to begin with the end in mind. So when I showed you guys that slide where you're at the top and you're that exceptional executive assistant, part of that is, where do you want to go in your career? What does growth look like for you? Because I've experienced time and time again in my career where I was focused on a title change, but I wasn't focused on the growth that I needed to really become the better version of myself. And so there's a little bit of a double-edged sword between title and true growth. Now, if a title is coming to you because you deserve it, because you're on a track to, let's say, have a promotion from a senior executive assistant into like a director of administration, you need to have a conversation around, here's my existing job description. Here's everything that I do. Everything that I do is in green. That's my job description. Here's the list of everything that I do above and beyond my job description. That's in red. Now, either we want me to continue focusing on just green, or we want me to continue to focus on green and red together. In order for me to do that, I want to have a conversation around what my career growth looks like. I think that that should include some of the following: more compensation, a title change, certainly a change to my job description so that it's clear what I'm responsible for, and then I can be held accountable for it. So that's one way to approach it, is let's just simply look at this. How much do I do today above and beyond my existing job description? That's a really easy conversation to have. I would say the other thing to consider about titles, and I will warn this group about this very, very carefully, the title chief of staff is confusing. It is not clear. It is different in every single organization. And for the majority of the time that I've held the role, I spend at least once a day explaining to someone what the heck I do. So if you're thinking about a chief of staff title, be very cautious. Do your homework. Look at other job descriptions, because when you're transitioning from a chief of staff, from an executive assistant role into a chief of staff role, it is a different body of work. You're going from tactical and operational excellence to strategic excellence. You need more time freed up to focus on long-term strategic initiatives. You will struggle to continue to support your EA minimum bar functions. Those 8 competencies that I showed you, those are very hard to now put aside and have mental time to focus on strategic initiatives. So if you're thinking about that as your career path, certainly reach out to me. I have other resources I can share with you, but don't go for a title just for the sake of a title. It is not going to help you develop as a person, and it's not going to help you develop in your career.
Jillian, we have a question that I have some pretty strong opinions about that I'd love to share as well, because I feel passionately about this topic, but I'd love to hear your advice first on it.
Mhm.
What do you do or how do you find time to really focus on self-improvement, professional improvement when you have no time? Maybe you're working in an understaffed office. Maybe you support some extremely demanding, time-consuming executives. Maybe you have a lot of responsibilities outside of work with family. How do you balance that, and how do you find time for self-improvement?
No, I think that's a wonderful question. I'm also a parent, so I have a 15-year-old, and she's amazing and beautiful and drives me absolutely freaking nuts every day. And then I also have a 6-year-old son. I have a fiance, I have family, I have friends. And what I've learned, especially in the past few years, is that I need to dedicate the time to myself. And when I did it, nobody questioned it. So I started to change a couple things in my operating behavior. I was really stressed out in work. I was really burnt out in work. And so I said to myself, I'm going to get up and work out. And if I don't get up and work out every day, I'm going to take myself out to breakfast. Or I'm going to take them like 20 minutes to read a book. When I dedicated that time to myself, none of my direct reports questioned it. I set an example for them of how to support themselves in a balanced way. When I told my leader from 8 to 9 in the morning, I'm getting my kids on the bus, and then that 30 to 40 minutes is for me to work out, he didn't question it. And when he did try to get a hold of me, I had to maintain my composure and I had to not respond. And yes, there were times where I was in the middle of a workout and I was responding to Slacks, but I didn't stop my workout. So part of it is that commitment that you're going to make to yourself because nobody's going to do it for you. Emily, what do you think?
I totally agree, Jillian. I totally agree. As somebody that is also a parent and a president of a company, I find that I don't have much time. But I listen to everything on Audible. So books that I'm learning from, podcasts, of course, I listen to. And my commute to and from work, it's about 20 minutes each way. So my commute is not very long. So I have 40 minutes in the car that I dedicate to myself, to listen to a book. So, for example, right now I'm reading The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And that's my 40 minutes to focus on that. And that's my time. Um, so yeah, I think find those little bits of time. It doesn't have to be, extended periods of time. It could be 30 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is. But make sure you make some time for yourself. I
Yeah, and I would
completely
say,
agree.
I would say too, there's only one vacation I've taken in my entire career where I didn't bring my laptop, which that's my choice, right? So I think part of it is we need to act in terms of us making choices versus us being victims. I chose to bring my vacation on laptop because I would rather check my emails in the morning or the evening throughout the course of my vacation so that I'm not coming back to 600. That was my choice. So I think part of it is changing your mindset on the fact that this job is not imposed upon us, it is selected by us.
Yep. Yeah. Jillian, let's see, we have so many questions. I'm trying to decide which ones to get to. For those of you that are asking questions about job title, reallocation, organization charts within companies, I would encourage you guys to register for our webinars coming up in January. We have a two-part series coming up, one in January and one in February. We're going to talk about career pathing, and like what that looks like for the administrative profession. So those webinars are on January 23rd and then on February 5th, and we're going to dive deeper into those questions. So Jillian, um, for our last question today, can you talk about for those people that support multiple executives, and how they ensure that the conversations are happening, and the reviews are happening? So, like, what does that look like? Say you're supporting 3 to 4 people. How
Yep.
do you involve everybody? How do you get everybody on the same page when you're thinking about your review, about crucial conversations that you need to have? Who do you involve? How do you go about doing that?
I would start with that survey that I provided. So that survey is something that I've used both for myself and for my clients and for my peers. When you are able to create a data-driven response to your work, it makes it much easier to be able to see the common threads. So when you survey, let's say you're supporting 4 leaders and you're asking all 4 leaders to respond to your 8 core competencies, and you're seeing that only one of them is responding negatively, it's much easier for you to step back and say, perspective wise, this is the only leader who feels that I'm not accomplishing these tasks while all of the other leaders feel that I'm doing an exceptional job. I have work I need to do to understand what that leader's perspective is on my function. And if that leader doesn't understand the function that I'm performing for the business, maybe they don't need an EA, or maybe they need a different EA. So I think part of it is starting with the right data set in order to then have the conversations across multiple people. It's kind of like a 360 review. And if you tell your leaders as part of your review, you're doing a 360 specific to EAs, they're going to be like, damn, you go.
Jillian, love it. As always, it is such an amazing honor to have you with us. You always provide such wonderful, wonderful information. So thank you so much for taking your time out of your very busy schedule to speak with us. We very much appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure. And one more thing, I have a lot of folks that are asking, how do you edit the goal document? You don't actually edit it, you make a copy of the file. Once you make a copy of the file, it is yours and you can edit it up from there. We don't want to change the original because then everyone can't benefit from it.
Yes, yes, good note. Okay, so quick reminder, guys, go ahead and download a copy of your slides from the toolbar. Tomorrow, you will receive a recording of the webinar via email, and you will also receive a certificate of attendance. Another reminder that we are currently offering 20% off of all ELS forums. That is our best offer of the entire year. You will not see this discount again. It is over $400 off registration, so make sure to take advantage of this amazing opportunity. Go to elsforum.com to register for any of our upcoming free webinars, or use the promo code 2020 ELS to register for an upcoming forum. I hope you all have enjoyed today's ELSX webinar. A final thank you to everyone for joining us and for participating. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I wish you continued success. Take care.